Thanks for staying with us on Point. Of course, in just over an hour and 14 minutes, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is going to deliver his maiden medium-term budget policy statement. My colleague Nastassia Arendse is in Parliament bringing you rolling coverage. Very good afternoon to you, Nastassia. Over to you.
Good afternoon, Nzinga. Well, we set the scene a little bit earlier on, talking about it from an economic point of view. We had a conversation with the General Secretary of FEDUSA, so we can understand what it looks like when we look at it from a labour point of view. But the other interesting part of the medium-term budget policy statement is that you want to examine everything from a tax point of view as well. And we're going to be having that conversation with Professor David Warnaker, who is the head of Tax Technical at BDO South Africa. Prof, thank you so much for your time. Context is everything, and especially in an environment like this, when you look at South Africa from an economic point of view, what does the picture look like as we bring in tax into the picture?
Well, I think there isn't really much scope for expanding, raising any new fresh taxes. I think the minister's predecessor recognised that, and I think that theme will continue. There's simply the tax base in South Africa just can't absorb any more taxes. I think it should be more about collecting taxes from people that should be paying the taxes that are there already, and expanding the base to people that aren't paying taxes at all that should be paying taxes. So I can't really see any fresh taxes being introduced. As I say, I think it's more about just increasing the efficiency with regard to collection. So one of the things that I would like to see is I'd like to see more funding allocated to SARS and to the Department of Justice in order to try and increase the base for the taxes.
One of the topics that tends to creep up on social media every now and again is the idea of a wealth tax. Your view on that and whether that could work in South Africa, and does it work in other countries?
There are lots of examples where they've tried wealth taxes in different countries, and typically it hasn't worked. There are very, very few examples where it's actually brought in more than the cost of administering the tax. I think we've also got to recognize in South Africa we've got a very small tax base of people that pay the bulk of the taxes. So we've got about 300,000 individuals who between them pay about 40% of personal income tax in South Africa. We're experiencing a lot of those people are emigrating, looking to go overseas, and it's not, of course, only because of tax, it's because of a lot of other things. But I think that tax discourages people from staying. So I think we've just got to be very careful, because when those people go, it then tends to be that their skills go with them. They're often the owners of businesses, and their skills are then lost. Their families are lost to the South African economy, which is quite a desperate need of growth, and it's really growth that we need at the moment. So, in short, I don't think there's scope. It would be ill-advised. We've also got wealth taxes in the system at the moment. That's often forgotten about. Estate duty, we've got transfer duty, rates, etc. Those are all forms of wealth tax already in the system.
In terms of stimulating that economic growth, and suppose even borrowing from some of the utterances of the minister that we can't exactly tax our way out of the quagmire that we found ourselves in, what are some of the ideas to stimulate growth? What are the conversations you may be having with other economists, other tax practitioners out there? What are some of the things we need to be bringing to the table to be able to get us to where we would likely need to be?
Well, I think that some of the things that they could do are, for example, expenditure on infrastructure projects that create long-term sustainable growth. I think the temptation, especially in the current environment and given COVID and so forth and the poverty in South Africa, is to apply a lot of the windfall gains that we're currently seeing from our mining, from the resources and so forth, into social grants, and it's a very difficult discussion because there are a lot of people that are suffering in the current climate, but the risk is that if you put too much funding into that you then aren't putting it into long-term projects that in the future are going to benefit generations down the line to come. So that's the difficult discussion. Small and medium enterprises, funding to them, that's a critical part. They often struggle to get funding from traditional banks. So maybe there'll be some method found where funding to SMEs could be obtained, made more accessible.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. I do know that we're going to be catching up with you a little bit later on as well. That is Professor David Warnaker, who's the head of Text Technical at BDO South Africa, giving us his perspective and I suppose expectations as well in terms of what he will be looking out for when the minister delivers his budget policy statement at 2 p.m. This afternoon. Nzinga, over to you.
Thanks, Nastassia, for that rolling coverage. Nastassia, as well as our SABC News team in Cape Town, is going to continue bringing you rolling coverage in the run-up to that speech. And, of course, we'll get reaction from our team across the country.